Yep.
We are. So you're number 4, so you'll be there.
Great, okay.
So anyway, all the slides are in one deck. We have 2 microphones, and then I will have 1 microphone to do introduction.
Outside channel.
And then speakers will just hand you microphone.
To the Flutter channel about
Because we're in order, you don't have to
streams.
Yeah.
It is being
Said if you had
recorded and live broadcast.
everything.
No pressure.
Not at all.
And if you have
I just got your email. I know, but they did raise a nice conversation.
and
Because the guy that
we
did
haven't done a skill before, this is a very fun, relaxed crowd, so
in the channel talking
go with the flow.
yeah, so he started saying, he started trying to explain that.
We'll just clap. It gets weird. Yeah.
Any questions?
Not how people are trained to program.
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's on Scale's YouTube channel.
Any questions? We got the mic, so we can get going.
I think we give it 3 minutes.
Okay, we'll announce in 3 minutes. We're on a 3-minute range.
Sounded like a member she just pulled out of the air.
Ladies and gentlemen of Scale, we'll get started in about 3 minutes because it's raining and, people are slower in rain. Maybe, I don't know.
We're going with it. That one's yours.
Turns on and off.
They do it for us. They said don't touch any buttons. They turn them on and off for us. Just hold it.
Do you want to hold this or do you want it at the stand for when you get up there?
Me?
Well, to start, do you want to hold it here or do you want it up there okay. Well, there you go.
Oh, I need that.
Yeah, you need it first.
Sorry, I forgot we're both on stage first.
I'm just going to get a sip of water. I'm about to talk really fast. And I'll...
Yeah, go for
Go
it.
for it.
You're
Yeah, we got 2
good.
minutes.
Time. I get Jack.
I've got a lot of words to say.
You're like, who is awkwardly
I was
close
like,
to me?
it's my...
To be fair, at this conference, it could be anyone. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hannah. Nice to meet you. Well, what I did is he noted some too. It even make any sense. I mean, it doesn't even blow any words.
Next time it needs to be features.
Can't win them all.
You speak and you learn, right? I say we get going. I say we get started.
Is that you?
Not it.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Now everyone's quiet.
You're going to hold on to that mic, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That one's yours.
Well, and it will be the speakers.
Sure. We'll just hand it to him.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Upscale.
So thanks for being here tonight. My name is Jason Hibbets. This is...
Hannah Anderson.
We welcome you to Upscale. I'm with opensource.com, so hopefully most of you know about that, but if you don't, we're an online publication and community, and we like to share all of your open source stories. So we're happy to help organize Upscale this evening.
Yeah, big thanks to the opensource.com team. They do a lot of the content and help make this possible. So big thanks to them for hosting and co-sponsoring with Scale Upscale.
Thank you. And for those of you who have never been to an Upscale before, each speaker has 5 minutes. Most of them have 10 slides that will auto-advance at 30 seconds. There's a few special presenters in the audience.
Instructions are hard.
Yeah. But we may have confused them because, sometimes we do lightning talks, which are 20 slides every 15 seconds. So we decided to change it up this year, and, you're going to get 10 slides at 30 seconds. So.
For the most part.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think that's it. Anything?
Yeah. So without further ado, we want to bring up our first speaker.
Our first speaker is Brendan Gregg.
G'day, my name is Brendan, and CPU utilization is wrong. This is my 5-minute public service announcement. Now, you may say that utilization as a metric has always been wrong, but for CPU utilization, it is particularly wrong, and it is getting worse as CPUs get faster. Yes, I'm talking about CPU utilization. This is a metric we use everywhere. It's in all our dashboards, it's in our tools. It's used by Netflix in auto-scaling rules, and it's a metric that's very old. It's been around since time-sharing systems. How it works is the kernel measures CPU utilization as the time from when a thread begins running on a CPU to when it stops. However, the kernel assumes that the CPU is utilized the entire time. What can happen is instructions that are running stop, and they are stalled waiting on an external resource. The kernel chalks this up as CPU utilization. To give you a visual idea of how this works, imagine I told you your CPUs were 90% busy. You might think of it like this. However, what's really happening is that the CPUs are 20% busy and they're spending 70% of their time stalled, not making forward progress on instructions as they're waiting on external resources. This ratio between 20 and 70 that I've drawn, this is what we see in the Netflix cloud. So this is real. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse as CPUs get faster. To really explain this in more detail, I'll show it in an example, a case study. This is MySQL. This is running the same workload on 2 servers. The second server is 27% slower than the first. And if you look at the metrics, it's CPU bound. Wow, I love issues that are CPU bound because it means I get to use CPU flame graphs. And I would expect to see for the second server some tower in code that's 27% of the overall time. However, when I did flame graphs for both of these servers, the code was basically the same. The widths were just a little bit different. So there's about 10% difference, but there's no extra code here to explain it. Now, I do see this from time to time, and the reason is there is something happening at a lower level than the code. And so this is where I need to look inside the CPU, and I need to look at performance monitoring counters and model-specific registers to understand it. My first stop at understanding low-level CPU issues is to look at the real clock rate that's running. Now, I've written a bunch of open source tools to help do this. So this one is ShowBoost, and it uses MSRs to show that the 2 servers were actually running at 3,300 megahertz, so that doesn't actually explain the difference. One server can run at a different speed to another because it's in a colder part of the data center and it's allowed to turbo boost more quickly. So I always run ShowBoost just to check. There are other tools that can look at this as well. You don't have to use my open source tools, you can use other ones. But that's my first stop. Next is instructions per cycle. Here's another open source tool. Instructions per cycle is like miles per gallon. It shows how many instructions completed for the CPU cycles that were consumed. The higher the better. And server B had a lower instructions per cycle, 20% lower, which is a very big clue that this really is a CPU low-level issue. So now I can then find out why IPC is low. IPC is low because of stall cycles. And I wrote many other tools. This one is TLB stat, and it shows that there are 16% more cycles in TLB misses. So the TLB is the translation look-aside buffer. That's what the memory management unit uses as a cache for virtual to physical address translation whenever instructions are doing loads and stores. And if the TLB cache can't return an entry, the MMU must talk to main memory and do page table walks, which are very slow. Now, TLB issues, I haven't seen TLB issues in a long, long time. It seems very strange that I'd pick a TLB issue as my case study for CPU utilization is wrong. Now, there's a reason I picked this, and I'll just give you a few moments to think about, do you expect to see such a TLB issue in the real world? My next slide will show what was causing it. Yes, you will see this in the real world. This was caused by the KPTI patches that have merged in Linux 4.15 for the meltdown vulnerability. These have been backported to all of the other kernels. The patches cause TLB flushes. That causes stall cycles in the CPU. This is reported as CPU utilization, and that is misleading. I have a blog post about it, and that is my talk.
Thanks, Brendan. First one up. So far, so good. Our next speaker is a longtime Scale attendee and longtime speaker, but first time on the Upscale stage. So we're really excited to have him. Please welcome up Kyle Rankin.
Hello. All right, so my name is Kyle Rankin, and I'm the Chief Security Officer at Purism. So this is a 5-minute lightning talk based on a 50-minute presentation that's based on a chapter in a book I wrote called Linux Hardening and Hostile Networks. I usually do slides one bullet point at a time, but you can't do that in Upscale, so wall of text, get ready. It's going to be really great. But you can see the proper presentation that's 36 slides at that URL. So computers didn't always have passwords, it turns out. We think of them as a good thing, but it turns out some people thought of them as a bad thing. Richard Stallman in particular saw passwords as a means of control. So we know of him for a lot of contributions, but a lot of people don't know that he's a password cracker. So he joined the MIT labs. They didn't have passwords. He was cool with that. The admin put in passwords, and he started cracking them and then going to users and saying, hey, by the way, I notice your password is mumble. Why don't you do what I do and just hit enter? It's a lot faster that way. And so, yeah. So then we had passwords, right? But the thing is, most computers supported at most 8 characters, some of them mixed uppercase and lowercase. So what you got were single words, really easy to guess. Popular passwords were things like love, sex, secret, and of course God, and even more so password, because that's a great password, as we all know. So if you wanted to hack someone, what you would do is just go through the dictionary, try them all, and you would find the password. If that's too slow, you know a little bit about the person, you make guesses. And that's how everyone got hacked in movies. So if you wanted to hack the Whopper, you would pick, Joshua. If you wanted to hack the Gibson, you pick God. So with things like John the Ripper, you could automate this. So IT policy started jumping down with Active Directory and allowing you to set policies. So for example, you'd have a policy that says you must have at least one uppercase letter. So what did people do? Well, they did this because you would have 19 billion combinations, which sounds like a lot. It's impossible. Atoms in the universe, right? Well, so people would just uppercase the first letter. And so you'd have QWERTY, secret, password. And the attackers are like, I'm just going to uppercase the letters too. So then they said, well, we're going to be smart. We're going to have you have at least 2 numbers in addition to the uppercase letter, because that's 57 billion combinations. Impossible to crack. Again, atoms in the universe. So everyone just put 2 numbers at the end. And the attackers said, yeah, okay, that's cool. I can just put 2 numbers at the end of my dictionaries. So then they said, well, okay, that's fine. Stupid users, not following our rules. We're just going to require a symbol too, because that's 782 billion combinations. Again, impossible. No way to do this. So what everyone did was they started adding bangs to the end, which I like to call a password mullet. You have uppercase in the front and all of the numbers and symbols at the back. So then IT people said, well, I don't know, I'll be really clever. I'm going to take a dictionary word and apply leet speak to it, because then I can remember it. And so if you have password, you change the A's into 4s and things like that. If you want to be fancy, you do an ampersand instead of an A, and you get a password that we use for an admin password at a previous job. Yeah. The problem is hackers know leet speak too. I don't know if you knew that. So then they said, I know what we'll do. We'll rotate passwords. And so they say every 3 months we'll rotate them. So what the users did was they picked password 1, then they picked password 2, bang, then password 3, bang. The attackers guessed your first password, and then from then on they knew every other password you would ever pick. Right? So then IT spent all of their time every 3 months dealing with account lockouts and resetting passwords. All the users who picked a really hard password would get frustrated because it would be reset, and it basically never worked. So then we had XKCD, correct horse battery staple, and we started doing long passphrases. And so right now I would say, what's a good password? I would say, okay, fine, at the very least 12 character minimum, no rotation and no complexity. That's 95 quadrillion combinations, by the way. That's better than the 7.2 quadrillion that you have in an 8-character complicated password. No rotation means users are going to pick longer, more complex passwords because they can remember it and then muscle memory. But you don't have to believe me, because what do I know? NIST even thinks this is a good idea now after decades of bad policy. So you can't take a picture of that slide now, but you should take it to your IT department. So what's a good password? One that you can't remember. So I'd say very long, 20+ characters, truly random complex, and a new password for every account. That's impossible. So use a password manager so you don't have to do that. The problem is you do have to remember a couple of passwords for your password manager for disk encryption. So use a password database like KeePassX or something like that, and then that makes it a little bit easier. So the conclusion, you can do strong authentication today, but InfoSec can't decide what that looks like. Everyone disagrees on what a good password is and what good auth is. The other thing is attackers have always paid attention to users and user behavior, but defenders never really have. They just sort of push down policies. So defenders need to change that. Researchers need to focus less on movie threats and more on real life, how real users use policy. And in general, stop blaming users for their problems. The end.
All right. I just started using LastPass this year, and I don't even know 90% of my passwords anymore. So our next speaker is also first time to the Upscale stage. I'd like to bring up Kim McMahon, and we're going to learn about how to promote your open source project and building online community with social media.
So I'm one of those that don't follow instructions because these are all 30 seconds and I have some that are a minute, and this one was going for only 20 seconds. So I'm filling time. But I am going to talk a little bit about social media and mostly just Twitter. And I'm going to use a little example of what we had done at the code team as well as what I personally do to try to provide some interesting content. So the next slide's going to be a meme that Amanda Katana and I came up with. We were sitting around talking about like Fight Club. Boy, that was a long 30 seconds. So we were talking about she was talking about Fight Club. I wasn't, because I haven't seen the movie. But we're coming up with the #1 rule in open source marketing is that you have to participate in the community. And we started talking about what was really making our team successful, or what was making anybody successful, why any of us know the people that are here, is because, one, we're here, and we're out here talking to people, and that we are participating, and we're a member in the community. And that is probably, if you do anything, is you know who your influencers are, and you share their content, and you participate in the community. The second thing is the good tenets of open source. And well, we made some goals. One is because it helps us stay focused, doing the things that are the right things, and actually the thing that a lot of us strive for is that we really want to work less. So we do follow the good tenets of open source, as we all should when we're sharing content in this community, and that's transparency and openness, and that as a group we really can produce some better content. So that kind of flows into our goals in the code team, and my goal when I'm sharing on Twitter is that I try to do about 50% engagement, which means that I'm finding content that somebody else has shared, and there's an alien back there, that somebody else has shared, and try to retweet, see here, I'll turn around, try to retweet that content. And then the rest of it is I find interesting things that people say, like I'm going to look for that alien picture later, and then I'm going to reshare that on Twitter. Now, how many times do you tweet a day? And you can read this, like research has it all over the board. And when you read those articles, they say, if you don't just choose whichever bullet you want on that, then you will never be successful on Twitter. And it's just frankly not true. The magic number that I came up with for the code team was about 5 to 8 times a day. For myself, I do 3 to 5 times a day. I try to be consistent. Any more than that, and people just kind of start shutting you off. But the #1 thing is that you need to be consistent. You need to be out there doing it every day or at least a couple days a week, and that we're very community focused. I'm very community focused. I lead my content with the community. I make sure that I use their Twitter handle whenever I can. I use the hashtags like this event hashtag whenever possible, because that's the way that people are going to find your content. And that last bullet on the last slide talked about engagement, and that's what social media is about, and especially social media here in the open source community, is it's engaging with your audience. And I have a couple pictures here of some Twitter lists. That's the code team's Twitter list, and the other is my Twitter list. They're open, go out and find them. You know, I didn't know who the influencers were, or the people I wanted to follow, or the people that even I think say something interesting once in a while. I didn't know who they were when I started. So I created those lists, so go out and copy some lists. So if you're going to do this, set some goals so that you're not working too much. Know how much time you have to be doing all this stuff. Share community content, and Twitter is the easiest way in this community to get started and have your voice being heard. So just spend a little bit of time getting a profile picture and a decent description, Twitter description, and you'll be good. That's it.
Thanks, Kim. I'm really bad at Twitter, so maybe I need private lessons. I'm really excited to welcome up our next guest, which is Pat David. He's going to be talking about building a freedom-based photography community. So we're going to mix it up, a little bit more art involved, which I'm excited about.
Hi, I'm Pat David. We had a Libre graphics track for the very first time on Friday here at Scale, where we had a lot of folks talking about free software and the software and communities that we have around creative endeavors. I'm going to talk today about building something that we called Pixels.us, which is a photography community that's based entirely on using free software, but also extending those ideals to the material that people might want to have when they want to learn how to do things with photography. And why did we look at this? And the reason that we did was that we looked out at the creatives that like to do things in particular with photography and video and other things. And there was no central place for this, right? If I wanted to talk about photography or something, I didn't have a central place to go to commune with other people that were based around the concept of doing that thing, doing photography. For my own part, I did it because of bad GIMP tutorials originally. And when I wanted to learn how to process some of my photographs to make them look great and find a free software option to do it, you end up at GIMP for the most part, I hope. I'm a member of the GIMP team. If you want to fight, you can meet me outside the door. And the problem was all these tutorials, they were poor quality, they were cheaply monetized, right? I have to click through 10 different pages to look at 18 different steps so that I could see 20 different ads to learn how to add a blur to an image or make it pop a little bit. And it was obnoxious, which was extra painful because there are proprietary options and learning platforms that were doing this far better than anyone in the free software community. And it's painful because we have Darktable, Raw Therapy, GIMP, fantastic projects that I think are at least on par or better than some proprietary options, but that's not the same thing with the community and learning resources that were available. So what do we do? What was the answer to that problem? I have great software, but not so great community or learning resources. Well, in true open source spirit, I just said, I'm going to go do it. I had no idea if it was going to work, but I said, I'm going to make a community that specifically had the goal, which was to provide tutorials, showcases, and workflows for doing high quality photography using nothing but free software. And even better, extending that ideal to the material we produced. If I write a tutorial, it's CC licensed. You remix it as you want to. All the images in it are also CC licensed. All these images, by the way, are from our community members at Pixels.us, done entirely with free software in every instance. I happen to be lucky enough to be friends with a lot of guys from cool projects. Anyone ever heard Darktable, Raw Therapy, GIMP? I'm a member of the GIMP team again. Gimmick, Digicam. These were all fantastic projects, but guess what? They were siloed, right? If I wanted to learn how to do something in Darktable, I would go to the Darktable mailing list, which is great, unless somebody from the Raw Therapy mailing list might know something that would help me with the problem I happen to have. And that person was never going to see my question because they weren't on the Darktable mailing list necessarily, right? We fractured this. And the problem was I said, look, let's get everyone together in the community around the idea of photography with free software, not a piece of software. I'm not talking come to the GIMP community. right? I'm not talking go to the Darktable community. I'm saying come to where we have other photographers talking about photography. We all happen to use free software. And so it did. We started to kind of coalesce. It's been just over 3 years now since I sat at my dining room table and said, maybe I should make a website. I think I would like to meet some other people that do photography. And we have. We've had a ton of articles and blogs on the site now, a ton of great tutorials with a lot of community engagement where people are writing things for others and sharing it all freely with everyone in the community to use, remix, learn, and extend. That's the most important one, right? From an open source standpoint and free software standpoint, we want to extend it. And we've had great growth. This is the bottom down there is kind of just my generic traffic growth patterns. It's not exponential because it's free software, photography, the small Venn diagram where it collides. But you'll notice though it's steady, right? It may not be exponential growth, but it's a slow bit of steady growth as we begin to publicize and proselytize about coming out to do photography and learn about it. So if you like photography, I guarantee everyone in here likes to take pictures. I very much doubt anyone's going to say they don't enjoy taking photos. Well, you have a place now as a photographer to come and check it out using nothing but free software and free software workflows and where everything is being shared openly for everybody. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Pat David.
All right, I think I'm going to sign him up for a few articles on opensource.com, so we'll talk afterwards. Our next speaker is Kevin Fleming, and I'm really excited to learn more about software philanthropy for everyone. Come on up.
So I guess going along with that, this is my first time at Scale, by the way. It's a fantastic conference. So before I get started, when the next slide appears, there's going to be a picture on it. The first person to yell out what they see in the picture wins 6 free internets or something. So, all right, so if you don't know who Bloomberg is, we are a global company that produces a bunch of different things, financial services products, media, news, all kinds of things. But the most important thing is we have 5,000 people writing software. So we are heavily involved in open source. We do lots of things. But as you've probably all heard, Michael Bloomberg, who's the founder of our company, is heavily into philanthropy. What is it? Come on. No. What kind of event is this you're looking at? It's a hackathon, right. So what we have here is 2 hackathons, one in our New York office, one in our London office. They happened on the same weekend. They had about 75 Bloomberg employees. They had 20 or 30 people from these open source communities and about 20 or 30 students from nearby universities who all came in on the weekend to hack on scientific Python open source tools. This was a lot of fun. This was actually, I think, our 7th event doing this. The reason we do this is at Bloomberg we have a culture of volunteerism. So we have, as you can see, numbers there, I won't quote them all, but we have thousands of employees who contribute all kinds of time, but up until 4 years ago, they never had the opportunity to contribute that time to open source projects. We've now given them that chance. So we've done this for, well, the ones you saw there. The next slide is going to list a bunch more logos for more projects that we've done this for, and we're planning to do more this year. Interestingly, we get people come in on a weekend, even when the weather's nice, to write software, even though they write software all day long every day. We're crazy people, aren't we? We do this kind of stuff. So these are all communities that we've contributed to. We are continuing to contribute to them more. We obviously use all of the tools from these projects, which is why they were important for us to contribute to. And so when the slide changes, you're going to see what we actually produce out of this. And then I'm going to talk about what it takes to put on events like this. Part of the motivation for this is we want to get more people involved in open source projects. For those of you who still remember the first time you tried to contribute to an open source project, it's a little scary. You're a little, there's some trepidation there. You don't know. Are you going to send a patch and they're going to flame your patch and you don't ever want to contribute again? Doing it in a group environment where the people who are going to review your patches are sitting right next to you and helping you make good patches is just amazingly powerful. We have had events where people's patches got merged into the master branch of the project less than an hour after they submitted the patch. It was wonderful. So these things for running these events, these are easy, right? We have offices. We can provide food. We can provide water. We can provide Red Bull. We can provide all kinds of things. And of course, internally to our employees, we can advertise these things really well. I was hoping the slide would change there. Dang, it wasn't listening to me. So now I have to wait. Oh, there we go. The harder things, finding out when you can do this. People have lives. Amazingly, people have lives outside of writing software. It's crazy. People have conflicts and all kinds of other constraints. We have to bring people in. When we did this project, we brought in, I think, a total of 8 project leaders from those projects, literally paid for their travel to come to our offices and put them up in hotels so they could be there for the weekend to do this. So obviously they have schedules and families and those things. And interestingly, we found that a lot of many open source projects, including big ones, have no good place to advertise events like this. So you end up having a really hard time getting the word out. Now, the really hard parts. We do surveys in our engineering teams. Which projects would you like us to do these events for? I get the results back. I sort them by popularity. What's at the top of the list? Apache Spark. Apache Spark is a fun project. How many developers out of 5,000 do we have that know Scala? 6? 8, maybe? I mean, it's ridiculous. We would never be able to contribute effectively to this project. So, those are the things we have to work through to make this happen. Obviously, our goal is patches, getting more patches up. As we've done 8 or 9 events, I think we've probably produced 150 patches so far for a bunch of different open source projects. And I'm trying to encourage more people to try to do these things. If you work for a large company that has a volunteer program of any kind that contributes to charities, that you can even convince your human resources department to give you whatever you want to call it, comp time, time off, whatever, in return for contributing to an open source project in an organized way like this, please encourage them to do so. If you're interested in contacting me to learn more about this, you've got contact info there. And if you want to see the full version of this talk, there is a video on the FOSDEM 2018 website because I gave the full talk there. Thank you very much.
All right, next to the stage is Michael Williams, and he gave such a great Upscale talk last year. We decided to add him for a new topic this year. So we're really excited to have you back, Michael, talking about mentoring in creative spaces.
Welcome, Scale. Yeah, you know, this is the second time I've ever used slides, so forgive me. Last year, you guys are such a wonderful thing that I thought I'd get a little bit of more abuse and come today unprepared to talk about mentoring and all the problems that young people and people that make changes and the solution that I came up with. Last year I talked about free education and a community-based type of a platform which allows people to get free education and degrees. World Mentoring Academy, and basically an open community, very much like Scale and the Linux and Apache and PHP community. Basically, MOOCs started 2 years after I started, and we've built the platform out, and it's about 34,000, 35,000 users. The problem that a lot of people do is they get into the content and they don't know what they want to do, which I find kind of sad because things are changing so rapidly with big data, automation, robotics, that people get rather confused. They're in college, they're spending all their money, and they're spending 5 or 6 years, they still haven't declared a major. And I thought, well, how can I solve this big problem? And I actually knew what I wanted to do when I was in college. I wanted to be a clown. So for 35 years as a clown, after I graduated in engineering, and I used to be 4 years of college, boy, my dad's mad, right? So I thought, you know, actually Kathy Davidson, who actually wrote a nice little article about me in New York Times, she said that 65% of today's jobs will not even exist that when the elementary school kids get of age. And actually that kind of reminds me, I'm from Alaska, we had gold, you know, dredges and stuff like that. So I thought, now, how can I solve this problem if the target keeps shifting around? And I noticed something about young people. You know, when they're younger, they know what they want to do. Like, I want to be a doctor, an astronaut. And they get to middle school and their friends say, so what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be an astronaut. Oh, but you're not smart enough to be besides that, you're a girl. So, now how can I solve that? So I got my camera. I was a member of the Pasadena Media, and I took my camera and I went out to Caltech. And I thought, well, maybe I should ask some people that might know something about being an astronaut. So I was ready, and I talked to 3 astronauts. I said, hey, what could elementary school kids get involved in for future space and technology? because I'm not an astronaut, I wouldn't know. They said hydroponics and robotics. Go, wow, hydroponics and robotics. These slides aren't shifting quick enough, but anyway. We'll wait. That's actually a very nice guy. I was talking to him. I said, so what do you think the future is going to need? They're going to need miners? And he laughed at me. So I thought, well, he said hydroponics. So I went out to an aquaponics farm and filmed all the wonderful, fun things you can do in an aquaponics farm, you know, learning all the different types of things. And I was amazed to find that there's quite a few of them around, where you can go in and you can volunteer, you can work on, you know, horticulture and learn all kinds of cool stuff. And I thought, you know, kids would really like to go to these kind of places, and a lot of times they're in underserved areas. Like this one in particular was in the projects in Long Beach. And so what I did is I went out and I start to build a database of all the community gardens, hydroponics, aquaponics, permacultures in the world. Everything about them, kid-friendly, hours of operation, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. So that young people can find, you know, they're watching a YouTube video with the interview with the astronauts and the interview with all the various different fun stuff and then they can go out, and at the end of the video they go, find a garden next to you. They click on a button, a map opens up, local them, 4 blocks away in Toledo is a hydroponics that they can enjoy. 2 years later, they get to middle school and their friends say, so what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be an astronaut. But you're not smart enough to be an astronaut. The young person can say, well, for the past 2 years, I'm working on a variety of tomatoes that's been considered for the Martian colony. I don't think you know what you're talking about. Right? Because when that flame gets blown out in middle school, the kids have no direction, no ambitions, no drive. The only reason they do well in school is because they're good teachers and parents. So I went out and interviewed a bunch of other people because, you know, I interviewed astronauts, I interviewed Senator Barbara Boxer, Tommy, you know, all different types of people. Say, where are these creative spaces that young people can go to get support instead of being heckled at when they come up with the idea that they want to be a spokesperson or, in fact, actually a New York Marathon, Shalene Legan, who I interviewed in March, who won the New York Marathon. So if you'd like to participate with me, come join me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Michael Gatt, and apparently we were both on the open data track earlier today, and I gave half of his talk in my talk. I have no idea what he's about to say next, so we won't have that problem tonight. So come on up, Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Gatt, and I'm a failure. And if you're in this room, you probably are too. Hands, how many people have blown up production? Okay, yeah, we're all failures. It's endemic to our industry. If you're in tech, you fail. You fail every day. If you're a big company, you fail thousands of times a day. This is fine so long as we keep it to ourselves, but it becomes a problem when we interact with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world has slightly different standards of professionalism, and they tend to think of us as sort of clownish individuals who really don't get it. Boeing can't tell you that they can't duplicate your crash because it must be your environment. Do something different. Our standards, as I said, are different, and this needs to advance. Sometimes our mistakes cause real problems for people. And these are the mistakes, these are the failures that can be career destroying, they can be life destroying, mostly if you don't know how to handle them. And what I'm going to talk about here very briefly is what you should do, because we are all failures, we're all going to fail. Well, of course, you're going to do what you have to do, which is fix it. You're going to put in the hours, days, weeks, whatever it takes to make it right. But beyond fixing the immediate problem, assuming they don't walk you straight to the door, is how do you plan for that failure? How do you make sure it doesn't happen? Or if it does happen, how do you make sure you can handle it best? First of all, think about what you really want to do. What are the failures that you will do best at? As Mark Manson asks, what flavor sandwich do you like to eat the most? Because you're going to eat it a lot. So if your favorite flavor of failure is in DevOps, do DevOps. If your favorite flavor of failure is in straight development, that's what you should do. If your favorite flavor of failure is in networking, go there. Beyond that choice, think about where you're working. Ask the company you're working for or you want to work for, how do they handle failure? They tell you to ask questions in an interview. Have you ever asked them, well, what happened to the last guy who blew up production? Hopefully, your interviewer will laugh and give you a great story. If they don't, worry, because those are companies like this one. Those of you who never saw this Reddit, look it up. Guy showed up first day of work. They handed him an onboarding document. This is how you set up your environment. He copied and pasted. He didn't realize that in that onboarding document they had root production access, and the first thing it did was delete the database. Surprise, surprise, this company also never tested their backups. The CTO blamed him. This is another great one. Sometimes you don't need to ask. Sorry, this is really blurry, but sometimes you don't need to ask. This is a company that says on their website, they believe winners have always won. Thanks to Corey Quinn for pointing this one out, by the way. They don't believe that a startup should have devil's advocates. This is a company that deals with personal health data. Sounds like a great security approach to dealing with data, no devil's advocates. But beyond that, have a plan B, not just for your career, for your life. Failure is a lot easier to deal with if you have 6 months in the bank, do you? Because it's a lot tougher if you're worrying about living in your car next week. If you haven't thought about those things, please do. But beyond that, think about the people around you. As I said, we're all failures. It's part of our business. So when you fall flat on your face, ask for help. Someone will give you help because we've been there. And when you're running along and you hear someone behind you fall flat on their face, stop. You got the time. Turn around. Give them a hand up. Because that's how we all move forward together. Tech is a team sport. Surviving failure is a team sport. Thank you.
All right, so the last two speakers are going to practice your failure, maybe? No, I'm just kidding. If you want, you know. So our next speaker is actually a very long time Scale attendee, and we just found out that she had never spoken at Upscale. So we bullied her into creating a last-minute talk, which we're extra excited about. So can we please welcome Kayla Banks up to the stage?
So hi everybody, my name is Kayla Banks, and like I was saying, it's kind of last minute. I was literally at my track meet yesterday when my dad told me I was going to be doing a talk. So bear with me on these slides. So this is a picture of me at scale 11. You can see me, little seedling in the back. And this is a small group, and there's Sarah in the front if you guys know her too. And this is a small group of kids in scale. By the way, I'm going to be talking about why kids should talk at conventions. So this is where it all started. And this is my first presentation at Scale 11, Free to Be a Kid. If anybody has been to Scale that long, remember that talk. So my first, thank you. So my first talk was basically about me using open source. That's why it's called Free to Be a Kid, and how I basically made like an open source 5th grade newspaper, and that crowd was like, this is like the biggest crowd, and I was super, super, super nervous. And this is me at the Women in Advanced Computing. And actually, I also, I teach at different schools, and I was actually speaking at this school right down the street from here. If you guys are used to Pasadena, there's a school called Norma Coombs. And I was talking to some kids. We were teaching like CodeSpark and using CodeSpark, and there was this little girl in the back, and she was super, super nervous, and it reminded me, just like me when I was in 5th grade, doing my first talk. I was super, super nervous, and now I'm sitting here talking to you guys. And so, yeah, ever since Scale, they kind of garnered my passion for going to conferences and learning and talking to adults. And what a lot of people don't know is that, you know, kids can talk to adults, and adults can learn from kids. That's kind of the inspiration for the kids track at Scale. And I don't know if anybody actually went to the kids track or the kids development that was in room 10 across the hall. But yeah. So me and Justin have been a long time. And so this is me when I was 13. I was on TV at Melissa Harris Perry's show, and they chose me to speak for, I actually forgot what I was speaking for. So yeah, every time I've been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people were just sitting like, what are you talking? Every time I go to church, they'd be like, oh, I saw what your dad posted on Facebook about you. What would you possibly be able to talk to adults about? Well, one thing people don't know is that there's actually a large, large gap, especially for engagement, because I know what a lot of people have been talking about engagement. There's a large gap of engagement, and that's the youth. People tend to think they understand the youth. You know, they think we're on our phones 24/7 and all that, playing games, wasting our time. But they actually don't know that we have a lot of valuable input, like a lot of perspectives you wouldn't even know from kids like me. And so this was my first keynote when I spoke at OSCON in 2015, and that one went kind of viral. And this is me at Scale again last year. So I just want to say that speaking at conventions really has brought me a lot of opportunities, and you'll see those in the next 3 to 4 slides. It's brought me a lot of opportunities. Scale's been the first one, so I'm just going to wait to the next slide. Okay, so there's actually my friend Jono Bacon. Shout out to Jono if you guys seen him. I really love Jono. This is actually a panel that we did last year, and I don't remember if that was the panel that we also did with the creator of Linux. Yeah, like I said, this was kind of last minute, so I'm not used to this flow. Okay, so this is also me when I went to the White House. So like I was saying, all these speaking at these conventions have gotten me to so many places, and I'm only 16. I was invited to the White House to speak for the CS for All event. Also, please don't mind the picture. I look really ugly in it. And yeah, so you can see the White House still in the back. I'm just waiting for the next slide. Okay, so there is a Linus sandwich. You can see. So you can see there's me and my dad, and there's Linus Torvalds. I want to say, after going to the Speaker of the White House for Obama, this is my peak of speaking at conventions. It's me and Linus Torvalds. This was taken at the, I'm running out of time. So also I just wanted to touch bases on, it's really important for kids to speak at conventions because not only have I been able to meet Linus Torvalds, go to Prague for free, there's also colleges that are reaching out to me, and I'm only in 10th grade, and so it's a really impressive to put on your memory and your resume. Anyways, get your kids, your cousins, nieces, nephews, get them to speak at conventions, especially Scale. Thank you.
Great job. Our next speaker is no stranger to the Upscale stage, and Corey Quinn's this is more of an experience than a talk. We're gonna see what it's like to be at the C-suite.
Thank you.
All right, Corey, you got this. You is good, you is kind, you is important. Hello, and thank you for inviting me here. to your company's board meeting. Although later, when you check, no one will remember actually having invited me. Don't worry, I'm not going to stop talking long enough to take questions from anyone. Yeah. You probably recognize my company from making statements on airport ads that make no sense. That's fine. There is no call to action. There is no buy here button. The entire point is so that when I'm here standing in front of you, you don't question who the hell I am. Let's talk about how my company's product works. I will not explain it to you. I will not expand my acronyms. And if you ask, I will very subtly imply that you're the dumb one. I'm not here to give you a 10,000-foot view. I'm not here to give you a 50,000-foot view. I'm here to give you an orbital view. Think strategy. Think beyond. Think the new. Later, I'm going to go out and play golf with the man or woman who makes the actual buying decision. So this is really just a dog and pony show. That was a joke. This is a Fortune 500 company. Of course the decision maker's a man. Diversity isn't a thing here. Now, please note that my product or service is not actually going to solve your real problem. You'd be amazed, astounded, and grateful at how little that actually matters to anything. Consequences don't matter. Because when the finger of blame comes to point at someone, rest assured it's not going to be pointing at you. By doing business with my company, you're doing everything right. You've done your homework. You have the right thing to point at. We're in the good part of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Everything that's up and to the right. Low and to the left is called niche player, which is Gartner speak for shitty. We talk about this extensively at length in every in-flight magazine, which is what your CIO reads, and then decides, okay, I need a resume project. What am I going to do? Ah, here we go, and here I am. It's all about getting in front of your buyer. Now, you have a choice. You can pick some dirty open source hippie who can solve your problem in 20 minutes. Yes. Or you can hire a bunch of MBA consultants who are eager to prove themselves. They'll work 120 hours a week and bill for 40. Your choice, it's up to you. What that dirty hippie doesn't realize is that the halls of power are greased with favors. Yes, it's a slippery hall. However, the point is I do business with you, and later you come and help me out. Is this dirty? Little bit. However, you're a Fortune 500 company that does something. I haven't bothered to look at what that is. However, it's not saving the whales. If you want to do that, go work for UNICEF. They're not on my client list. Doing business with my company is a win for you, and it's a win for me. We all come out of this ahead. That's what large-scale business is all about. There's never been a better time to work with me. I have to say, the time is meow. There has never been a better chance to partner a large enterprise company with a large enterprise service provider. There's something to be said for that. Unfortunately, I will not be staying to take questions. There's someone else who desperately needs whatever the hell it is that my company does, but that's all right. I will deal with them later. Remember, we talked about the high-level orbital view of strategy. Other people who will have other conversations will go down to the 50,000-foot view and down to the 10,000-foot view as those conversations continue to evolve. But you stay right where you are, on your boat, because you are all C-level executives. My name is Corey Quinn. I'm an advisor to Reactive Ops, specifically because they don't sell that way. Mostly. If you've enjoyed this talk, feel free to see mine tomorrow at 1:30. Silence of the Lambdas. Terrible ideas in serverless. Thank you.
All right, let's give another round of applause to all of our Upscale speakers tonight.
Thanks again for coming out. After this, directly after this, is game night right outside the exhibit hall, so you can head directly there if you want the party to keep continuing. And because we love ending on downers.
Yeah, one more slide. Just a reminder that
wah, wah.
we lose an hour of sleep tonight.
Yeah.
So party hard at game night.
Thanks everyone so
Thank
much
you
for
very
coming.
much. Nice.